Hey everyone! So last week I jumped on here and talked about my top tips for putting a CV, a resume together. As I explained then, I've been recruiting for someone in my team. So I've had numerous people apply, I've seen countless CVs and really have seen the good, the bad and the ugly. So put together my top tips for what I think are the do's and don'ts for a CV. And I thought following on from that I would give you some top tips in terms of the interview itself. So while your CV can often be the first impression a potential employer will have of you, the interview is probably going to be the first time they've actually seen you in person. So equally like with your CV, it's really important you make a good impression, and you really want to make sure you're not doing anything that's going to put them off you or see you in a bad light, or you don't want some of the little niggly things to be something that they remember. You want them to remember you for what you're capable of and what you can do and what you can provide to the company. So here are just my quick tips in terms of the interview process itself. So number one for me is dressing appropriately. So we all go for different jobs, different roles, different dress codes wherever you go, but for me it's making sure you dress appropriately for the role that you are applying for. So I'm a finance business partner, so the role that I was recruiting for was working in an office in a corporate environment. So I expect somebody to dress smartly, so either in a suit or a smart outfit. For ladies, it doesn't necessarily have to be a full-on suit. It could just be a nice dress with a jacket or a nice smart two-piece. For guys, in all honesty, I would expect them to wear a suit with a tie. But again, it's different depending on which role you're going for. Even if, like where I work, it's quite a smart casual dress code, I would still expect for someone at the interview to dress smartly. You're dressing to impress, you're making an impression, and you want people to think that you've made an effort in your appearance, because if you haven't made an effort in your appearance, then what does that say about whether you're going to make an effort in the role? Does someone really want to employ you if you haven't taken the time to come smartly dressed? And I mentioned about for guys I would expect them to wear a suit. That's just from my opinion and my experience of where I've worked in the UK. I have noticed it's a bit different here in Canada. Quite a few men did interview and they turned up smartly dressed but without a tie. And initially I was quite taken back by that, quite surprised, and when I talked about it with a few people, they did tell me that's just quite common. In Canada, I think it's a little bit more laid back than what I'm used to, and obviously where the temperature can get so hot as well, the tendency that people don't wear ties. For me, still really important. I wouldn't not give someone a job purely on that basis, but yeah, I just think how you look and how you present just says a lot about you as a person. So number one is dress appropriately. Two, always be early. Whatever time you need to be there for the interview, get there early. Make sure you're there at least 15 to 10 minutes early. If you don't know where you're going, do a recce beforehand. So drive there the night before or a couple of days before. Make sure you know 100% where you're going, what the public transport situation is like, what the parking is like, because there's nothing like going for an interview, you're already stressed, you're already worried about it, and then you get there and there's no parking and you've left it too late, that then you're rushing to try and find somewhere to park nearby, you're getting stressed, you're sweating, you're not going to arrive in the best frame of mind. So always do that recce beforehand. Make sure you know exactly where you're going. If you're through an agency, speak to that agency. They can talk you through, they can describe. If you're really not sure, use Google. I love using Google, and love Google Maps, where you can actually like drop the little person and you can actually see where you are, really get your bearings. And I normally always drive out there before, just to kind of know exactly where I'm going, because the last thing you want, the last pressure you want, is being late or worrying about that. That's the last thing you want to think about when you're going in for an interview. So my next one is be confident and be assertive. I know interviews are stressful situations. I know some of us love them, some of us hate them. I personally do not like interviews at all. But you have to be confident, you have to be assertive, and you have to remember that they're not there to catch you out. It's the opportunity for you to show really what you're capable of and what you can do. You are selling yourself. Don't be arrogant, obviously, or cocky. No one likes that. But you really need to be confident in your ability. There's a reason they've asked you in. They've seen your CV. There's a reason you're there. So take ownership of that and be confident and be assertive in your answers and be strong. Don't hesitate in an answer, or don't give an answer and then counteract it with something, or contradict yourself, or change your mind. Whatever you just stick with your answer is and be confident. Next one is know your CV. I have interviewed people who haven't known or come across like they know what's in their CV. Now, by all means, bring your CV with you, because you're not going to know it off by heart, that line by line. That's fine. So bring it with you in case your employer asks you a specific detail. But make sure you generally know the gist of it. You should do. It's your history, and if you've been open and honest in your CV and haven't lied, then you know exactly what's on there. But I have had cases where people just feel like they haven't known their CV. You ask them a generic question about a role, and they'd get their CV out and they're siphoning through it in front of you and they're kind of reading it. That doesn't fill me with confidence. You should know what your career history is. I've also had people, when I've asked them a question, and their response has been, it's in my CV, you can see it on this page. No, that's not a good response. Yes, I've read your CV and I've gone through it, but I've asked you the question for a particular reason, and I expect you to respond. Even if you recite word for word what's written down on your CV, always answer the question. Don't refer back to the CV. Make sure you know what's on there, so when people ask you questions, you're like, yep, that's this role, I was there for this time, and perfect. Next, be clear on the role that you want and why. So even if you just need a job and you don't really care where you work, you need to sell to them that you want to work at their company and you want to do that job. So that's what you need to sell to them. And even if you're doing this job because it's a job down here and you ideally want a job up here, or you want a job here sideways, you can talk about wanting to get more experience, and that you eventually want to work your way up and you want to see development roles, but never say you're applying for this role just because you want to work somewhere else, or just because you want to get into another area. Because that might be your ultimate intention, and if you're working in a good company for a good employer, they want you to develop and they want you to move on, whether that's sideways to another area or whether it's promoting up. So they want you to move forward, but at the same time they're recruiting someone for this role because there's a need for this role now. So they don't want someone that's doing this job but got their eye on something else straight away. They need someone to focus on this role. So you really need to make sure that you explain why you want the job, and equally why you want to work for that company. Again, I get it, you just need a job, so sometimes you may not care where you work, but the employer cares. The employer wants you to want to work for their company. They take pride in the company that they work for. So you need to make sure that you have an answer for why that company appealed to you. And make sure, while you should look at their website and make sure you understand the company, you don't need to go through it all inside out, but make sure you look at what their values are, what their culture's like to work there, and make sure that when they ask you, what do you know about the company, you've done more research than just looking at their main page on the website. Like, yes, do look at their website, but also dig around and go through a few of the different tabs and have a look around at what their values are, what they stand for, what are big projects they're working on, what's their plan in the future. Maybe, if my role is obviously finance, but maybe look at the finances. Again, you don't need to recite everything, learn everything in their P&L balance sheet, but just get a feel for what kind of numbers we're talking about, or what the company structure's like, because you really want to sell to them that you want to work for them. You want to leave that interview with them thinking, that's the right person that I want in my team. They really want to work here. I can see that passion. Maintain eye contact. This is a big one for me. I think it's really, really important. Again, it shows confidence and assertiveness, and it shows that you're interested. I've had candidates, not recently but in the past, where you sit there and you try and engage with them and have a conversation interview with them, and they're too busy just staring out the window, not paying attention. That's no fun. That's not fun to be in that interview, because almost straight away you know they're not the right candidate, but you have to go through that process. And you think, if you can't even give me attention and eye contact for an hour of an interview, sometimes it's not even an hour, what are you going to be like on the job? Are you going to be bored? Is this not a job you want? So always maintain eye contact. It shows you're interested, it shows you're paying attention, and it shows you are listening, which is really, really important. You really need to listen to the questions they are asking you so that you can respond appropriately. If there's more than one person in the interview, maintain eye contact with all of them. Obviously not at the same time, it's impossible, but make sure that throughout the interview you are looking and speaking to each person in the room. You're not just speaking to the person that's asking you questions, because even if there is just one person asking you questions, the other people there are there for a reason. So always make sure you're directing your attention to them as well, to make sure that they know you recognise that they're there, you appreciate why they're there, and you are talking to them just as much as you are to the person speaking in front of you. And then lastly, my last tip is always have some really good questions at the end. It's a good opportunity for you to ask questions about the company. At the end of the day, it's not just them interviewing you, it's you interviewing them. Do you want to work for this person? Do you want to work for this company? There might be elements of the job role that you're not 100% sure about. This is your time to ask those questions. Anything that you're not sure about, this is the time to ask. So do make sure you have some good questions. Make sure you have more than two. Don't always just do the bog standard, what are the next steps, or what's the holiday like. You can ask what's the next steps, that's a reasonable question to ask right at the very end, but you want to be asking things like what do you see the challenges are in the next 3 months, what do you like about this role, what don't you like about this role, what's the culture like. They're the kind of questions that you want to ask, and by all means dig deeper and say, okay, what's the structure of the company, talk about the team, how many people are on the team, what are the interactions, what are the challenges, what are the difficulties, what are the good bits, anything that you want to ask that really shows that you're interested in working for that company. Please don't ask any bad questions. The all-time worst question I've ever had, this was recently, somebody asked me how much effort I expected them to put into the role. I did ask them to repeat the question because I wasn't 100% sure I understood them, but no, they asked the same thing: how much effort are you expecting someone to put in? Obviously my response was at least 100%. Obviously rings alarm bells now. The interview already hadn't gone well, but you don't want a question like that, because even if the interview has gone really, really well, it makes you think, why are you asking that question? Why would you ever apply for a job, go for an interview, expecting not to work at least 100%? Baffles me. So yeah, so the questions you come up with are just as important as the ones that they're going to ask you that you're going to answer. So make sure you put some thought into that beforehand, so you've at least got some good questions. And if you do get on, if there are multiple stages in the interview process and you get on to another round, don't be afraid to use the same questions again. Using the same questions again is better than not asking any questions in the second round, because the second, third, fourth round, whatever, will be with different people, people you haven't met before. So you may feel like you're saying the same thing over and over again, but they haven't heard it. So do recycle questions if you have to, if there's nothing else you can ask. I mean, there should always be something different you can ask, because the people are different. You can look them up on LinkedIn, you can look at their experience. They might be more from a HR background or a business background, finance background, but you should always be able to find specific questions for them. But at the very, very least, worst case scenario, just repeat the ones that you asked previously, if appropriate. Don't just say, no, I don't have any questions. So that's it. That's my top tips to follow on from the CV tips. I hope that's helped. Even if I've helped 1 or 2 people in the interview process, I know it can be really nerve-wracking. I don't like interviews either. So these were just my tips that I've learned over the last few months while I've been recruiting. So hopefully that's helped you all. Thank you.